Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. We'll just hang on a minute until someone comes on and then we'll get cracking. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I can only see me. Is there a way where I can see you, or does it not work like that?
Oh, I don't know. I can see both of us. It just comes up naturally.
Never mind.
Are you
Um,
sure?
yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm fine. How are
I'm
you?
good, thank you. Right, today we're talking about year one phonics test, and we've chatted before over on YouTube. But I asked you if you wouldn't mind coming to chat to me about year one phonics because you've got a lot of experience with that. So, first of all, can you explain just a little bit about your background in education and why it's relevant to the year one phonics test, please?
Absolutely, yeah. So I am a EYFS expert. Um, so I'm with the very young children as they're learning to read. I was year one teacher for some years as well, and I was also reading lead for 5 years. And in that time, I took my school results from 66% pass rate to 96%, so a big jump.
Hmm. That's great. Lovely. And so, for parents who are new to, the kind of phonics screening, can you explain what exactly it is and why it's important in year one?
Yeah, so the phonics screening check, it's a test. It's a check that children can blend. They can say the sounds and blend them together to read the word. And it tests that they know the sounds that they need to know by year one. It looks like this. So this is an actual phonics test from 2014. It's
Right.
up of 20, oh, made up of
Yeah.
20 real words, and
Yeah.
with 20 real words, and the children just sound them out. So quiz,
Hmm.
b, at, back, and 20, some people call them alien words, pseudo words, nonsense words. They're made up. There's always an alien next to them, and the children just sound them out. F, M, when. And it's that simple. That's how it works. For the school, and for the government, it gives oversight that lets them work out which schools are doing well. I think for the teachers, it tells us which children are. Um, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. It tells us which children need extra support and which children are hitting the required level. I would say, as a disclaimer, as reading lead, and I know it's the same for a lot of reading leads, we know which children need the extra support.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's not quite as effective as it could be because like, I had 100% success rate of knowing which children would pass well, and which children needed more support. Um, but yeah, that's the funny screening check.
Yeah.
It's just 40 questions. They have to get this. They don't announce the pass rate until after the
Oh,
test, but
okay.
it's always been 32, and I don't think they'll change it. So you're looking at 32 each year.
And why do you think they don't mention that till afterwards?
They collect in the results and then they announce it. I think it's a political thing. I think if they make it easier and if they said 31 is the pass rate, then everyone would say, "Oh, you've made it easier." And if they
Um,
make the pass rate higher,
right.
then the results are likely to go down, and no party wants to preside over that either. So I think it's likely just to stay the same.
Okay. So then, you talked about real words and pseudo words or alien words. Now, a lot of people comment on that and find it quite odd for children to learn alien words. Why do you think that's included? Is it just to practice the blending so that children know how to blend, or is there something I'm missing?
Yeah, so it's a combination. So most children learn to read phonetically, so they're blending and saying the sounds. But some children read sight words. So if they're using alien words that they haven't seen before, it's a good way to show that they know their sounds and they can blend. But also, if you think of some of the much longer words that the children will be reading, they are made up of shorter words, which are often nonsense words. So The one I always use an example is fantastic.
Mm.
So if a child wanted to read fantastic, you've got tad, which is an alien word. Tick, technically an alien word, I think. I know it's a real word, but not a word children would come across very often. And then you've got fan as the real word. So by understanding the alien words, they can then use that within real words when they get to the much bigger words as they get older down the line.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never actually made that connection before. I don't know why. That does make sense because a lot of people will say, well, what's the point of learning all these fake words? They spend so much time learning all these fake words. But actually, like you've just done, you've broken it down, and parts of words don't actually make sense. Yeah, someone else has just come on in case they're not sure what we're talking about. In the test, there are fake words and real words, and the reason behind that, Paul's just explained, is because parts of words don't necessarily always make sense. That makes, I've been in teaching a long time, and I've only, with you telling me why, that makes a lot more sense, which is really, really good.
When you
Um,
do the phonics screen training, that's the reason they give, and that's the word that they give as well to break it down.
and often, is it always the case that in the test they have the like a little alien beside the fake words so children know? I think you did show us a minute ago.
Yeah. So every alien word will have a little alien, and what happens is, so the way it works is, if I was doing this to a child now, I'd say this page we've got 4 words, and they're all alien words, or they're all nonsense words, depending on what word you call it. And then
Mm.
I put my finger here. I'm allowed to indicate the word, but I'm not allowed to put my finger under sounds. It has to just stay out of the way, so they will read it. Whatever the child says last is what you have to accept. So if they say t, e, l, tol, and they've read it right, they get it. If they say tol, tell, then they won't get it because they've changed it into a real word. So whatever they say last is the word that you have to accept.
And that's what you mark on.
And that's what I'm on. Yeah.
Right.
And then the real words have no aliens.
Right, because when I work with children and they are sounding out words, they will do unusual sounding out, and then but then they do get the word. So that's interesting that as in their mind they're obviously like processing the word, and it's not necessarily sound 100%, but then when they read it, as long as they read it correctly, right? Okay. So then, what do you think are some common misconceptions parents have about the phonics screening check that you personally would like to talk about?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one. So one of the ones that comes up um, fairly often is, I hear people say, "Oh, well, good readers fail this test." And
Oh,
actually, I've never met a good reader who's failed the test, and I've never met another teacher that's had a good reader
right.
fail the test. What is true is that sometimes good readers will try and make them into real words, but you do need to practice this before the phonics screening check. So, for instance, they might say tull, they might make that into tell because they want it to make sense. Um, but yeah, that's definitely a misconception. I've had a bit of a Google around it as well, and I just don't think it's true. And it's not it doesn't test reading. All it tests is whether the children can say the sounds and blend them together. It won't test fluency, so how well and quickly they can read, and it won't test their understanding.
That's
So a child might, especially for the real words, they don't need to know the words. They don't need to know what the words mean because it doesn't test that. All it tests is whether you can blend them together and read them.
because one of the things that people will say that they're not keen on with the test is that children then are just constantly sounding out everything. But as you know, as your children progress, onwards throughout school, they are actually taught to only really use phonics on the words that they don't know. It's not to use eventually on everything. It's just that skill of like being able to work it out. But I do know that some children, if they're particularly struggling with phonics, they will sound out every single word. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I was going to show you this later with a later question, but I'll show you now.
Yeah.
So I like the children to read 3 times. Um, so what we would do is we would go through it the first time.
Yeah,
Let me please all page you've got there. Go. That shows better. So the first time we read it would be understanding the word. So she. So they might need help with the e sound. So we'd work out the
yeah.
she. But the they might know, and then strings. Then we would go back and read that sentence again, and maybe 3 times so it gets faster, so that they're now fluent. And once you're fluent, then the comprehension comes. Then we go on to the next one. We'd read that 3 times, and then I say, right, great. Now go back to the beginning, and we read the story again.
It's that repetition, isn't
It's
it?
that repetition, and because to understand a story, you need to read with a certain amount of fluency. If you're sounding out every word, you're not really taking in what it means, so you won't be able to answer questions about it. But
Mm.
by going through that fluency, by reading it 3 times, if they're a better reader, they can read the whole book 3 times. First time for understanding, second time for fluency, third time for comprehension. For the slower readers, I would do it sentence by sentence and then keep going back to the beginning each time.
So that would be of the obviously preparation for the phonics to develop those other skills really, because obviously there's such a focus on the sounding out for the phonics test.
There is, and you don't want to get caught up on just blending all the time, because then the phonic test comes and goes, and you've got a class of children or your child who then can say all the sounds but don't actually read.
And you do it like I've known year one teachers that have practiced it throughout the year for a long time. There's a lot of pressure, a bit like arguably, pressure like the SATs and everything. Like it's a big deal when they're in year one doing this test. So then, what are the key phonics? You've kind of gone over it, but what are the key phonics skills children need to have mastered by the time they take the year one phonics test? Obviously, like blend it, sound out and blending, but it. Let's look at the test setup. Like, what does that look like? You,
So, sorry, carry on. Yeah, so literally all they need to do, um, and they can put their fingers under the words, and they can have a photocopy and put sound buttons on if they're used to that in school. But really, the only skill they need to do is say the sounds and read the word. That's all they need. When I first did the phonics screening check as a reading lead, I made it really special, and I had all juice and everything. I would never do, and I never did it again after that. It's just we practice these sometimes in school. The children are just used to them. It's just
yeah.
part of our general teaching. So the children then shouldn't see it as something special. Oh, you're going to have a quicker read of some words. It's a just quick 5 minute test.
Okay. So just that practicing and that skill of pointing, and like you say, with this sometimes, well, in schools they're called sound buttons, aren't they? So they're just little circle shapes, and you put them under each sound, not necessarily each letter. Can you just go over that actually? Because there's a big difference between the sounds and the amount of letters. They're not always the same. Sorry.
Yeah, so you have the phonemes are individual sounds. So I would put a sound button under the individual ones.
Yeah.
Uh, if you've got 2 letters together, so that's our grapheme,
Yeah.
that would be hot. If it was a word, for instance, light, it's finding the digraph, so light, light.
Yeah.
And in the actual test, if the children do this in school as part of their normal daily practice, then they're allowed to do it in the test on here.
Oh, they can write on it
Yeah,
themselves.
we photocopy them, but they're only allowed to do that if it's normal classroom practice.
Oh, not in the test though.
But they can do it. So if in my class every day we do read, write, ink, and we do it like this,
Yeah.
they're allowed to do it in the test,
Oh, okay. Okay.
because it's what they're used to help them read. So I would say to parents, check what the school do, and if the school put on sound buttons and will let the children do it in the test, they can practice that at home, because that's a skill in itself, is finding the I.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
it's a split digraph, so we've got like the magic A and the magic E, actually identifying them. So that's another skill that they can use to support themselves.
Yeah, because often, like when I teach, I don't know about you, but if we're writing a word like the word light, I'll say it's got 5 letters, but it's got 3 sounds. Can you, make sure and eat and like if it's I in the middle, like make sure your I has got 3 letters, because obviously parents might just do individual letters if they're practicing at home, and you can look online, depending on what the school is using. If it's like normal phonics phases, you can look those up on Google, phase 2, phase 3, phase 5, and you'll see the individual sounds that you can, of the children are obviously using. So, what are some practical and fun ways parents can support their child's phonics learning at home, but without it being homework and, a bit like, oh, we've got to do this for school, like making it fun and interesting?
I am going to say, and I say this a lot in real life, I say it a lot at school, read with your child and you read the stories to them.
Yeah.
If they, if you want your child to become a reader, read to your child. Do the
Mm.
sounds. Sorry, the sounds. Do the voices. If you're reading a story and there's characters in there, do the voices. Make it exciting. There's loads of, you can just type it in. There's loads of phonics online games. Buried treasure is one that a lot of schools
Oh yeah,
use. If you just type
that's
in buried treasure, that's the pirate ones.
that's on the phonics play, I think,
That's
isn't it?
right. Yeah, but and that one you have a word, and if it's real, you have to drag it into the treasure chest, and if it's made up, you have to drag it into the bin, and they all dance. Children love that. Finding out from the school which sounds they struggle with, and just making games with it. Make a snap game with it. Make your own board game, snakes and ladders type games, anything like that. That's just fun. But the the key thing for me is read. Read with your child, and they will become a reader. Even if they don't pass the phonic test, they will become a reader at some point along the line.
Yeah, and even if your child is a reluctant reader, not necessarily pushing them to read, but adults reading first, my turn, your turn, so they can hear the fluency and hear the expression. Um, and then once the child is more confident, even if they are copying exactly what you're saying, it's just building up that confidence with the reading at home. So then, now you've just said go into the school and ask what sounds they're struggling with, because teachers are always willing to help. Um, but what are other ways that parents can tell if their child is struggling with phonics, um, practically, and just through observation maybe?
Yeah. So for me, if your child is reading and they're struggling to put the sounds together, so what that might look like is if we had cat and they say cat, man,
Yeah, which
that's only them.
we
Yeah, so they're not linking the sounds to and they're not blending it in the right order. That would show it up. Or if they were putting the sounds in the wrong order, so they were using the right sounds. For instance, pop, and they were saying pop, they were reading it backwards, or O because they're getting the P and the O mixed up. Things like that would flag up. But I think the key thing for me is if you're concerned at all, just speak to your class teacher and they will tell you whether your child needs extra support. They'll tell you whether you're what you can do to help your child, whether your child is fine. They just need to keep going because you'll know as a parent you might have a feeling, but your teacher works with your child every single day, and they will know your child inside out when it comes to their reading. I'm sure.
yeah, definitely. And in some cases, a parent can notice that something's not right, and maybe the teacher hasn't picked it up. Because sometimes children can mask, and just they've some children I've worked with, parents have said to me, oh, they can read really well, but then actually when you sit down with them and actually break down the reading, they're not sure. Or with you they might be masking and just they've seen a word so many times that they read it and you think, oh yeah, they're great, and then at home the parents then come back to you and say, well, that's the only word he knows. Everything else he's struggling with. So it is like good communication skill, isn't it, as well? And the respect between both the teacher and the parent. The teacher to respect the parent to know that something's not quite right, and then vice versa as well, and just looking for strategies. And there is also obviously, is there individual phonics leads? I know you said reading lead, but is that a thing anymore? Phonics leads?
I think we don't. I think it probably depends on the school. We have, but as class teacher now, I'm in year three. I identify the year three children that need extra support, and they read with either me or a teaching assistant, or the head teacher actually takes some children and read with them every single day, so that they're getting that extra level of support.
Yeah, it'd be great if we had enough staff that could just listen to children every single day. It's just always the number of staff, isn't it?
Yeah, parent volunteers are always helpful. So if any of you watching want to go in and read in your school, please speak to your teacher, go to them to the office, because I know a lot of schools would love to have more volunteer readers in.
Is that welcome still? Because some schools I've gone into and they don't have any parents come in, and then other schools they welcome it with open arms. Does your school welcome it?
We have one person, I think, at the moment. We welcome with open arms. We just can't get enough people.
Interesting.
There's nothing preventing it. So I've heard before schools say, "Oh, we can't have parent helpers in because of safeguarding and things like that." It's not true. They can. They just need to make sure that that parent is within sight of another member of staff at all times. So there's ways around everything. So there's no reason why your school can't. It's if they don't, that's just because they're choosing not to, or that they just don't have anybody.
Right. Yeah. And so what does now we talked about the pass result. So kind of going into a bit more detail, looking at what a pass or not yet met result means. So, like, because often I'll get parents come to me and they're panicked because they're in year two and they haven't passed the phonics test. Like, they're really worried and really concerned. Um, but like the year six, now I could be wrong, it's just to check, like you said, though, teachers already know who's where they're at. But would you say it's just more for the government, really, to check, or?
I think it is. I really think it is, because it doesn't give, certainly for me as a reading leader, it doesn't give me any new information. I read I'm not reading lead now, but the reading lead does. We'll do an assessment similar to that with every child every half term, from
Oh,
year up right up to year three often. Up to year three often. So there's no surprises. And what I would say is, if your child is going to not pass by a lot, that shouldn't be a surprise to you as well, because your teacher should already have had a discussion with you about it.
yeah. When I was training, and we talked about parents' evenings, for example, my trainer always said, my mentor, sorry, always said, when you get to the parents' evening, nothing that you say to the parent should be new. Nothing should really be a shock.
Exactly.
Be because it's what is it once a term, the parents' evenings?
Once
Totally.
a year, once or twice a year, depending on the school.
You can't really like if you go as a parent to a parents' evening and they're really struggling. They should have really told you way before that point. You can't have, just been thrown on you at that halfway through the year or whatever it is. You should really know, shouldn't you?
Exactly. And the phonics screening check is exactly the same. Any children that I've identified, for instance, as might not pass it, I've already spoke to the parents. I've given them work packs. I've told them how they can help. I might have run an after school club and invited them in. Might have worked with the child, with the parent, so that the parent can see exactly how I do it and how we'd like it done to help support for the phonics check. So yeah, there really should be no surprises. You tend to have kind of three groups of children. So you have the children that will pass easily and they'll just read the words. You'll have another group of children that will be sort of between 30 and 35. So they're the ones you're pushing up. And then you'll have the ones that are way off and they will have a specific phonic plan to help them get through. Because it's not about the check. The check is there, but actually if we do all the right things as schools and as parents together, generally the check is passable. You shouldn't need to do anything new for the check other than have a bit of a practice because children need to know how to do it
Okay.
from an admin point of view.
Okay. And then we've already kind of talked about reading fluency and developing that. But if we look at the test itself, what month is that normally in?
Uh,
Sorry,
June.
June. So what does
Yeah.
that kind of look like?
So what would happen is you'd just go, as a region leader, I would go and get the child and I'd say, oh, we're just going to do some reading, some words. But all I want you to do is try your best for me. And you have this booklet. There's a practice one. So we can talk through the practice one as much as we want. So I'll say to the children, we've got 4 words here. They're all real words. In, and they'll read it in, at, beg, and some. And then if they get stuck, I can say, oh, let's use our Fred talk or whatever strategy they use as a school. Let's sound it out. Let's say the sounds and read the word egg, and I can help with that. Then we do the same. These are all alien words, so these are all made up. Ot. Some children would then say two. So all let's do it in the right order. Ot. And that's the only help they get. Then, oh, now we're going to do my little booklet. These words are all alien words. They're all made up. Can you read them for me? And I'll just put my finger here to indicate the word. And I would have a little tick sheet with that's got all the words on, and I just tick them off as I go. We do all 40 words. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. It's quite quick. It gets harder. So if when I'm doing it, if I've got a child that can't get through the first 20, then I tend to stop the text because there's no point in carrying on. That's the last page.
Okay.
I should point out these are different every year as well, but you can't just learn these. So the words go from CVC words and they get harder, and then you have the 2-syllable words and sometimes 3 syllables.
And where can you get those practice papers for that?
So the actual phonics screening check material is available for past years. If you just type in phonics screening check .gov.uk, you'll go to the official page. But if you want to type into Google phonics screening check practice, sites have this. So many of them available all over the internet. If you use Twinkle, there's loads on there. I think most sites have them. You will get a whole list of them, and your school can make some up as well.
And what have you seen that's been like really good practice from schools about how they implement, how they get children ready? What have been the best strategies that you've seen?
For me, it's just making it consistent throughout the class. So phonics, schools tend to teach phonics in a block, usually first thing in the morning, but not always. So they might have a 20-minute phonics lesson or a 30-minute phonics lesson. But if that's the only time you do it, the children aren't going to remember it. So if you think about the year ones, when you're doing modelling writing and you're practicing the sound, oh, that's the one we learned today. What sound is that? It's the word pumpkin. Oh, let's sound it out together. Let's pinch our fingers. Using it all through the day. If you're doing a history lesson and you're doing some writing on the board, using your phonics in history so that the children are seeing it being used, because that's the key, is that the children can see it being used.
And I know I used to see teachers, because obviously the uniform, let's talk about the uniform of a teacher who is a phonics teacher. You often have a little apron and you look like you work in a kitchen, especially if it's read write ink.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have your frog, and if you don't know what read write ink, this will make absolutely no sense to you, whatever, and you'll be like, why have you got a frog in your bag? But often schools that actually follow like read write ink do have to wear this for their lessons and everything, and they'll often pull these out throughout the day of the cards and just practice them and do different words and that kind of thing. Now, in terms of schools, some schools I've known have told parents that the actual test has happened, and some schools I've known to working with parents, they haven't been told, and I think it's because they don't want parents to panic, they don't want children to be overwhelmed, because like the best way of doing any type of test I've noticed in schools is it's just like yesterday's test, it was just like last week's test. Is that your experience? Do you tell parents when it's actually happened, or do you just do it and not mention it?
Yeah. So previous to the test, before it happens, we my school, my ethos is I do share it with the parents.
Okay.
I tell them that I'm not making it a big thing with the children. We have a little workshop so that the parents can have a look, because parents know it's coming up. You know, it's not you know these parents know of the phonics screening check. They are worried about it, and if we don't talk about it, then they're just going to keep that worry inside. Some schools don't, and that's fine if that works for them. After the phonics screening check, we do have to report the scores to the parents. That's a legal requirement. So if
Okay.
it
Okay. So the
usually goes home in their report. So if you schools can't tell you that you can't have the results, they have to tell you. It's a legal requirement that we tell you
okay.
after the test. So every school will report it in a different way, but parents will get their results.
Okay. And any kind of tips for parents who are, just wanting to look for maybe phonics resources or reading books or any type of other result? You've told us about where to get the tests, but any kind of other resources that they're looking for, where would you recommend finding them to help them?
Yeah. So there's two trains of thought. So the first thing I would do is find out what reading program your child uses, because that will be familiar to them, and you're probably best off using those same resources. And then you can you can just type it in read write resources, for instance, on somewhere like Amazon, and you can buy the resources there. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there's also an argument to come up. So we use read write to do from other places, so that children are using it across and applying it.
Okay.
So I would think I would start off by finding out what program it is and stick to that as much as possible, but don't be scared to go off it. And if your child is reading fine, you don't even need to stick to the resources. If they're struggling, maybe speak to the school about what they suggest, because they'll know their child best. But I would come back to, if you want your child to pass the phonic test, and if they don't pass it, don't worry, because it's just a mark. The teachers are still following on the same strategies that will get them there eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Is read to your child and read with your child every single day,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be in the evening or in the morning over breakfast. Reading every single day is what will make the difference.
And does the do you think the phonics test is in line with the year one objectives, or kind of?
Kind of, I think, and I have to be very careful that I'm not too political here. The people that write the test are also writing the reading programs and the objectives, so they are all quite tied in.
Okay,
So, for instance,
fair enough.
if you think about EYFS, I've not been in EYFS since they've changed it to the new one, but I think they need to know, is it 30 sounds or 40 sounds in year R? But that's like A, B, C, D up to Z. It also counts,
Right.
well, but it also counts double letters like double L, double
Okay.
F, double Z. So it kind of follows that
Yeah.
pattern, and I feel like year one does follow on quite nicely on that.
Yeah. Because if children haven't quite reached the mark, then I don't know if this is the same in your school, but in other schools I've known, they'll just do it again in year two, when the next like kind of phonics test happens. So a group year one will do it, and then a group of year two that maybe haven't done it. But I don't know how often do they, if they still don't get it again, do they do it again?
No, so legally, if they don't do it in year one, they have to do it in year two.
Right.
If they don't get it in year two, that's it. They don't do it again.
Okay.
You can test, we get the test papers. We can test them informally to see if they would have passed, but nothing gets reported. It's not an official, you have to do it. If a school chooses to check their year three to see how they get on, that's just the school choosing to do it.
Okay. Well, we've just got a couple of questions left. Thank you very much for your time, and I've loved all your resources and your background, and it looks fantastic. Um, Now, for parents, what's the biggest piece of advice that you give them to help their child feel confident and relaxed about the phonics screening check if they know about it coming up?
So if the children know about it, I would just be saying, all you need to do is try your best. That's all I ask. Just try your best. It doesn't matter. The teachers won't tell your child whether they pass or fail or anything like that. Your teachers will just say, you've done a really great job. Well done. Head off back to class. It will be that informal. So leading up with it, play games, read with your children, listen to your children, and don't show your child that you're anxious because there's no reason for you to be anxious. If they don't pass, the children are still going to follow on that program that they're on. It's not going to change anything. They're 5 and 6 years old, so don't be anxious. Let them enjoy it, and yeah, most of them won't even realise they're doing it. I've had children go home. Parents come up to me after the second week and said, "Was there a problem? They didn't do the phonics screening check." And yeah, they did. They did. They just didn't realise because we're just going to read these words like we do every week. Just having a read.
I think that's better because one of my friends was a year two teacher, and when the SATs was compulsory in year two, she just did little things every now and again. And then when it was the actual one, it was just like no difference, and her kids were fine. Like there was nothing, like there was no one upset or anything like that. I just don't like it when like it's a big deal, and in the scheme of things, it's not really in the long run. It's just a benchmark really to say where they're at and whether they did it or not. Now,
It,
before, oh, sorry, carry on.
no, you carry on.
I was just going to say, before we finally go, do you want to give anything a shout out? Because you are a man of many different businesses and different things going on, and you can see your wonderful setup behind you. So, do you want to shout out anything that you're doing, especially your account, your new account?
Yeah, yes. So most of everyone who follows me knows I do Osborne. I love it. I'm on a mission to get myself a bus that I can drive around schools full of books, and it's going to be great. I've also just released a new subscription service
Oh, great.
called the Primary Parent Pit Stop.
Oh,
Now, the idea behind it is it's going to have a learning to read module, which will fit in perfectly with this, and a key stage one or a primary maths module. But the key one for me, which is I set it up for home ed parents, but actually it's the children and the parents that go to school that are more interested in it. Is there a there's a question and answer section where parents can ask me questions. I will do a video and post it for everybody. So basically, you get access to a qualified teacher anytime you want. Um, to get the question and answer session, it's £22 a month.
oh wow.
If anyone mentions Jenna and they want to sign up, let me know and I'll sort out a 50% coupon. So it'll be £11 a month, and that coupon will last for the length of however long you're signed up for.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much. That's lovely. And anything else you want to plug? Or
Um, no, I just want to say just enjoy reading with your children. He won't thank me for saying it, but my daughter, when she did the phonics screening check and she went to the same school as me, and I was her reading lead actually, really struggled with reading early on. But I'd read to her since she was literally in her mum's tummy. I would read every single day. She didn't go without a story. She's now 12 and she's a great adept reader. And it's because we just keep reading. It's something fun that we do.
yeah,
Um, and there's a book out there for everybody. And don't believe anyone that tells you you've got to read this type of book or that type of book. Find a book your child loves.
yeah, definitely.
And that'll do the job for you.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was lovely to chat to you again. Very, very good of you to. You've been working late tutoring, so it's lovely to chat to you. And my name's Jenna. I'm an online primary tutor, and subscribe if you want to see who else I'm chatting to on my Instagram. But thank you once again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.